I sat alone in my small apartment in Chicago, staring at the wall as memories flooded my mind. A decade of love and partnership had crumbled away, leaving me with nothing but echoes of laughter and shared dreams. My name is Alex, 35 years old, a hopeful artist who had poured my heart into every canvas. The day Lisa walked out with a richer man, I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath me. It was one of those mornings when I received the news, a simple text that read, "I'm happier now." Those 3 words shattered my world. I took a deep breath, picked up my paintbrush, and vowed to reclaim my life. But before I delve deeper into my story, let me know in the comments how you found the strength to move on from heartbreak. Your stories inspire me, and if you're moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It gives me the courage to share my truth. Now, let's get into my story. I sat in my hotel room in Chicago, staring at my laptop. I had just opened an email from Lisa. The subject line read, "We need to talk." My heart raced. I clicked on it, and my stomach dropped. The words were cold and heartless. Lisa wanted a divorce. She said she had moved in with someone else. His name was Mark, and he was wealthy. I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me. I read the email twice, hoping it was a bad dream. It wasn't. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The skyline was beautiful, but I felt empty inside. 10 years of marriage, gone in an instant. I thought about our life together. It had not always been this way. Lisa and I met in college. We were young and in love. We shared dreams and laughter. We built a life together. But things changed. Over the last year, I noticed Lisa was different. She spent more time on her phone than with me. She went out with new friends and came home late. I felt left behind, but I didn't say anything. I thought it was just a phase. Now, I understood. She had found someone else. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to confront her, but I decided against it. I needed time to think. I needed to prepare for what was coming. I spent the next few days in a fog. I attended meetings and made calls, but my mind was elsewhere. I imagined Lisa with Mark, living a life without me. I felt like a fool. I had given her everything. I had supported her dreams, but she had left me for someone richer. I returned home after the trip. The house felt empty. I walked through the rooms, remembering the laughter we had shared. It was hard to accept that it was over. I sat on the couch and took a deep breath. I knew I had to act. I started planning my next steps. I needed to gather evidence. I needed to protect myself. I opened a new bank account and moved my savings. I wanted to be ready for the fight ahead. I called my best friend, Jake. He always knew how to make me laugh. I needed that now. We met for drinks. I told him what happened. He listened and shook his head. "Man, that's rough," he said. "But you can't let her walk all over you. Fight back." It felt good to have someone on my side. Jake encouraged me to get legal advice. I took his suggestion. I found a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases. I needed someone who understood what I was going through. As I gathered evidence, I started to notice things. I looked at our joint bank account and saw strange transactions. Lisa had been taking money out for weeks. I felt anger bubbling inside me. She was spending my money on her new life. I called the bank to get details. I learned that she had made large purchases. It hit me hard. I was the one working hard every day, and she was living it up with Mark. I felt sick. I kept my findings to myself. I didn't want Lisa to know I was onto her. I started to take notes and keep records. I knew I needed to be smart. I was preparing for war. Jake checked in on me often. He offered support and comic relief. We would joke about my situation, but it was hard to laugh. I felt the weight of betrayal on my shoulders. Weeks passed, and the emotional pain was heavy. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. Then, one day, I received a call from a distant relative. They had passed away and left me an inheritance. I was shocked to learn it was a valuable art collection. I knew this could change everything. I decided to keep it a secret. I wanted to use this information as leverage in the divorce. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could turn this situation around. I prepared myself for the next steps. I felt stronger. Lisa had betrayed me, and I was ready to fight back. I would not let her take everything from me. I would stand my ground. The email that changed everything had opened my eyes. I was no longer the man who would let things happen to him. I was ready to take control of my life. The storm was coming, and I would be ready. As I sat in my quiet living room, memories of happier times flooded my mind. It felt strange to think about those days now. I remembered when Lisa and I first met in college. We were both young and hopeful. We shared dreams and had fun together. We spent late nights talking about our future. I was studying marketing, and Lisa was focused on her career in fashion. We laughed and made plans. It felt like we could conquer the world. Our early years together were filled with joy. We traveled to new places and tried new things. We enjoyed simple moments like cooking dinner together or watching movies on the couch. Life felt good. But slowly, things changed. After a few years, Lisa began to change. She became more focused on her career and less interested in our life together. At first, I was supportive. I wanted her to succeed. I encouraged her to take on new projects and pursue her dreams. But then, I noticed she was spending more time away from home. She started going out with new friends I had never met. I felt distant from her. I tried to reach out, but she brushed it off. She told me I was being silly, that everything was fine. I wanted to believe her, but deep down, I felt something was off. I remembered the nights when she would come home late. She always had excuses. I was at a networking event, she would say. Or, I lost track of time with some friends. I wanted to trust her, but a nagging feeling grew inside me. I felt like I was losing her. I thought about the moments I had sacrificed for her career. I worked long hours to support us while she chased her dreams. I had put my own goals on hold, hoping it would pay off in the end. Instead, it felt like I was losing her to a life I didn't even know. The signs were there, but I ignored them. I thought things would get better. I thought we would find our way back to each other. But now, sitting in the empty house, I realized I had been fooling myself. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our old pictures. I saw smiles and laughter. But now, those images felt like a lie. I felt anger rise in me. How could she throw away everything we built for someone else? I remembered the last birthday I celebrated with her. It was a simple dinner at home. I tried to make it special, but Lisa seemed distracted. I asked her what was wrong, but she just smiled and said she was tired. I wished I had pushed her harder to talk. Maybe I could have saved us. Now, it was too late. I was left with the weight of betrayal. I struggled with my emotions. I felt anger, sadness, and confusion. I wanted to confront Lisa, but I knew I had to stay calm. I needed to prepare for the fight ahead. As I gathered evidence for my case, I realized how much Lisa had changed. She was obsessed with social media. I had seen her post pictures of her new life with Mark. They looked happy, but I knew the truth. She was living a lie. I felt a mix of emotions. I wanted to be angry, but I also felt hurt. I had given her everything. I thought our love was strong enough to survive anything. But now, I was left with nothing but memories. I kept reminding myself that I was stronger than this. I had to channel my anger into action. I focused on gathering more evidence. The more I discovered, the more determined I became. I reached out to my lawyer and shared my findings. He was supportive and encouraged me to stay strong. He reminded me that I had rights and that I could fight back. I felt empowered knowing I had someone on my side. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on my own choices. I had spent years trying to make Lisa happy, but in the process, I had lost myself. It was time to take back control. I needed to focus on my own life and rebuild. I started to plan for my future. I wanted to invest in my passions and find joy again. I thought about my career and the goals I had set aside. I wanted to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. Jake continued to check in on me. He reminded me to take care of myself. He encouraged me to find new hobbies and meet new people. I needed to find happiness again, even if it felt impossible right now. One evening, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. I walked through our neighborhood, noticing the small things I had taken for granted. I watched families playing in their yards and couples walking hand in hand. I felt a pang of loneliness, but also a flicker of hope. As I walked, I realized I was ready to move forward. I would not let Lisa's choices define me. I would rise from the ashes of this betrayal. I would rebuild my life. The quiet moments of reflection helped me find clarity. I understood that I had the power to create my own happiness. I was not just a victim, I was a survivor. I would fight for my future, and I would not look back. I returned home with a new sense of purpose. I was ready for the challenges ahead. I would face them head-on, stronger than ever. The storm was coming, but I would be ready. I woke up each morning with a new sense of determination. I knew I had to prepare for the fight ahead. I couldn't let Lisa take everything from me without a battle. I started gathering evidence of her actions. Every night after work, I went through our financial records. I found her spending habits alarming. She had been taking money from our joint account for weeks. I noted every transaction, every withdrawal. It was clear she was planning for her new life with Mark. I called my lawyer, and we scheduled a meeting. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case. When I arrived at his office, I felt nervous but ready. He listened carefully as I explained what I had discovered. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "We can use this information to help your case." I felt a small surge of hope. I was not alone in this fight. I had to keep moving forward. I decided to open a separate bank account to protect my savings. I wanted to be smart about my money while I navigated this difficult time. As I gathered more evidence, I started to notice Lisa's behavior in our shared home. I watched as she spent more and more time on her phone. She would laugh and smile at her screen, and I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew she was talking to Mark. I didn't confront her. Instead, I kept my distance and focused on my own plans. I felt empowered by the idea of taking charge of my life. I confided in Jake more often. He was my rock during this tough time. He reminded me to stay strong and not to lose sight of what mattered. One evening, as we sat at our favorite bar, Jake made a joke to lighten the mood. "You know, man, you should just send Lisa a bill for all the money she's taken. Maybe she'll think twice about it." I laughed, but the joke held some truth. I wanted to hold her accountable for what she had done. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the betrayal. As the days went by, I felt more focused. I created a timeline of events, listing everything that had happened. I documented Lisa's spending and her late nights. I wanted to be ready when the time came to confront her. During this time, I also started reaching out to my network at work. I hadn't been in touch with many people since Lisa and I had grown apart, but I knew I needed support. I attended networking events and met new people in my field. I felt a spark of excitement as I connected with others. It reminded me of who I used to be before my marriage changed me. I remembered my ambitions, my dreams, and my desire to succeed. I was starting to find myself again. One night, after a long day, I returned home to find Lisa sitting on the couch. She looked up at me, and I could see a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual. "How was your day?" I paused, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to lash out, but I took a deep breath instead. "It was fine. Just busy with work." She nodded, but I could see her mind racing. I knew she was wondering how much I knew. I decided to keep my cards close to my chest. I didn't want to show any weakness. As the days turned into weeks, I continued to gather evidence. I discovered more transactions that showed Lisa's spending on luxury items. She was living a life I had never agreed to pay for. It felt like a betrayal of our vows, and it fueled my determination. I met with my lawyer again, and we discussed the next steps. He suggested filing for divorce soon. I felt a mix of fear and relief. I was ready to take that step, but it felt daunting. The day finally came. I walked into the courthouse, my heart pounding. I had all my documents ready. I felt a sense of purpose as I approached the clerk's desk. I filed for divorce, and then I took a deep breath. Afterward, I called Jake to share the news. "I did it. I filed," I said, feeling the weight lift slightly off my shoulders. "Good for you," he replied. "Now you can finally move on." I hung up feeling a mix of emotions. I had taken control of my life, but I knew the battle was far from over. I had to face Lisa and her reaction. That evening, I returned home to find Lisa in the living room again. She glanced at me with a mix of curiosity and concern. I could feel the tension in the air. "Did you have a good day?" she asked, trying to sound friendly. I hesitated. I wanted to tell her everything, but I knew I had to stay strong. "It was fine, just busy," I replied. The silence stretched between us. I could sense that she wanted to ask more, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I had my plans, and I was ready to move forward. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a surge of confidence. I was taking control of my life, and I would not let Lisa's choices define me. I was ready for whatever came next. The storm was coming, but I had prepared for it. I would face it head on. After filing for divorce, I felt a mix of anxiety and relief. I had taken a big step, but I knew the real battle was just beginning. I spent my days preparing for what was to come. I focused on gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Then, one morning, I received a call that changed everything. A distant relative had passed away, and I was named in their will. I learned I had inherited a valuable art collection. I couldn't believe my luck. I felt a rush of excitement. This could give me the leverage I needed in the divorce. I arranged to meet with a lawyer who specialized in inheritance issues. I wanted to make sure I understood the value of what I had received. When we met, he explained that the collection could be worth a significant amount of money. It was a surprise inheritance, and I knew it could shift the balance in my favor. I made the decision to keep this news to myself for now. I wanted to use it as a trump card during the divorce proceedings. I could see Lisa's face when she learned about it. I could almost hear her anger and disbelief. It felt good to have something that could turn the tables. As I continued to prepare, I also made a plan for how I would confront Lisa about the divorce. I knew it was important to choose the right moment. I needed to be calm and collected. I would not let her manipulate me. A few days later, I found myself in our living room, pacing back and forth. I was waiting for Lisa to come home. My heart raced with anticipation. I rehearsed what I would say in my mind. I needed to be firm, but not cruel. When Lisa finally walked through the door, I took a deep breath. She looked surprised to see me home early. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, trying to keep the atmosphere light. I decided not to beat around the bush. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Her expression changed. She sensed the seriousness in my tone. "About what?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "I filed for divorce," I said, watching her closely for her reaction. For a moment, she looked shocked. Then, her expression hardened. "You can't be serious. You're just going to throw away everything we built." I felt a wave of anger rise within me, but I kept my composure. "Everything we built? You've been draining our accounts and planning your life with Mark while I've been working hard to support us. This is not just my decision, it's yours too." She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised my hand to stop her. "I also have something important to tell you. I inherited a valuable art collection. It could change everything for me." Her face went pale. "What are you talking about? You can't just throw that in my face." I took a step closer to her. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Lisa. I'm stating the facts. You chose to leave this marriage for someone else. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine." Lisa's anger quickly turned into desperation. "You don't understand. I've been unhappy. I thought we could be better. I didn't let her guilt trip me. You didn't talk to me. You shut me out and decided to live a different life. I will not let you manipulate me anymore." The tension in the room was heavy. I could see her trying to find the right words, but I stood firm. I had to show her that I was no longer the man she could control. After a long silence, she spoke again, her voice softer. "What do you want from me?" "I want a fair settlement. I want to be able to move on with my life. I want to protect my future," I replied. Her expression shifted as she realized the impact of what I had said. The power had shifted in the room. I can see that she was rethinking her strategy. "I can't believe you would do this. I thought we had something special," she said, her voice shaking. "We did, but you chose to throw it away. I can't keep living in the past, Lisa. I have to look forward." After that conversation, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had faced her and stood my ground. I was no longer afraid. I was ready to fight for what I deserved. In the days that followed, I focused on my future. The art collection was a game changer, and I started to learn more about it. I contacted experts who could help me evaluate its worth. I wanted to be informed when the time came to settle the divorce. I also kept my distance from Lisa. I knew she was trying to play the victim, but I refused to let her manipulate me again. I started to focus on my own life, my own happiness. I began to reconnect with friends and explore new opportunities. I signed up for a painting class, something I had always wanted to try. It felt good to explore my interests again. I was finding joy in the little things. As I moved forward, I realized that I was not just fighting for my assets, I was fighting for my independence. I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. I knew the divorce process would be challenging, but I felt ready. I had gathered my evidence, and I had a plan. I was no longer the man I used to be. I was stronger, more confident, and ready to face whatever came next. The storm was still brewing, but I was prepared to weather it. The day had finally come. I was ready to file for divorce officially. I knew this was a major step, and I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I had prepared myself for this moment, and I was not going to back down. I arrived at the courthouse early. My lawyer met me at the entrance. He looked calm and assured. "You're doing the right thing," he said as we walked inside. I nodded, but inside, my heart was racing. The process was straightforward, but it felt heavy. I signed the papers and handed them over to the clerk. I was officially filing for divorce. It felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders, but I knew this was just the beginning. After I filed, I called Lisa to let her know. I wanted to be straightforward. "I filed for divorce today. You'll be served soon," I said when she answered the phone. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice rising. "We can talk about this." I took a deep breath. "We've talked enough, Lisa. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine. I won't let you control this anymore." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. You're being unfair. You don't understand how hard this is for me. I understand perfectly. You chose to betray me. This is the consequence of your actions, I replied firmly. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The next few weeks were tense. I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation. I knew Lisa would not take this lying down. I kept gathering evidence, organizing everything carefully. I had to be ready for her response. One evening, I returned home to find Lisa sitting on the couch. She looked anxious, her hands twisting in her lap. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, prepared for whatever she had to say. "I think we need to discuss the divorce," I said. "I don't want this to happen," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I made mistakes, but I want to fix things." I felt a pang of sympathy, but I had to be strong. "It's too late for that, Lisa. You made your choices. I can't go back." She looked at me, searching for something in my eyes. "You don't know how hard it's been for me. Mark isn't what I thought he would be. I'm not happy." I felt a mix of anger and pity. "You chose this life. I was here, supporting you while you chased after a new dream. I can't be your safety net anymore." She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. "What do you want from me?" "I want a fair settlement. I want to move on with my life," I said, my voice steady. "I want to protect what I have, especially now with the inheritance." Her eyes widened. "What inheritance?" I hesitated for a moment, but I decided to be honest. I inherited a valuable art collection. It could change everything in the divorce. She looked stunned. "You're using this against me?" "No, Lisa. I'm using it to protect myself. You've made it clear you want nothing to do with our past. I have to look out for my future." The tension in the room was palpable. I could see her realizing that I was no longer the man she could easily manipulate. I had found my strength. Lisa sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't want it to come to this. I thought we could work things out." I shook my head. "You had your chance, and you chose to walk away. I can't keep living in a fantasy." She looked at me with a mix of frustration and sadness. "I guess you've made up your mind." "I have," I replied. "I'm ready to move on, and I hope you can too." After that conversation, the tension didn't fully dissipate, but I felt a sense of clarity. I was no longer afraid of her. I was ready to face the divorce head-on. The next week, I received the official papers that stated Lisa was served. I felt a sense of finality as I opened the envelope. This was it. There was no turning back now. I prepared myself for the next steps in the legal process. My lawyer and I discussed the best strategy. We would push for a fair settlement, especially considering my inheritance. I felt empowered knowing I had something valuable that could help me. As the days passed, I focused on my own life. I continued taking my painting classes, and I felt more at peace. I was discovering new passions and interests. I was no longer defined by my marriage. Then came the day of our first mediation meeting. I arrived at the office feeling nervous but ready. I knew Lisa would be there, and I wanted to show her my strength. When she walked in, she looked different. There was a nervous energy about her. I could see she was trying to play it cool, but I knew she was struggling. The mediator introduced herself and explained the process. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I was prepared, and I was ready to fight for what I deserved. As the meeting began, Lisa started to speak. She tried to present her case, but I could see she was losing her confidence. I remained focused, ready to counter her claims with the evidence I had gathered. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out my case clearly. I explained the financial mismanagement and the impact of her choices on our lives. I felt strong as I presented the facts. I knew I was on solid ground. Lisa tried to argue, but her voice faltered. I could see that she was beginning to realize the gravity of the situation. The power had shifted, and I was no longer the man she could control. By the end of the meeting, I felt a sense of victory. I had stood my ground, and I was ready for whatever came next. The battle was far from over, but I knew I was finally on the right path. I was reclaiming my life, one step at a time. The mediation meeting had been a turning point. I felt a sense of strength and clarity as I left the office. I had stood my ground, and I knew I was on the right path. But I also knew that Lisa would not back down easily. In the weeks that followed, I focused on gathering more evidence. I continued to keep track of her spending and any communications that hinted at her plans with Mark. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she would throw at me next. Meanwhile, I learned more about my art collection. I contacted experts who could help me evaluate its worth. They told me it could be worth a significant amount of money. This knowledge gave me confidence, but I kept it to myself. I had to keep my cards close to my chest. As the divorce proceedings continued, I noticed changes in Lisa. She seemed more desperate. I saw her trying to reach out to mutual friends, trying to gain sympathy. I heard whispers of her attempts to rekindle relationships with people from our past. It was clear she was struggling without my support. One evening, I received a call from Jake. "Have you heard about Lisa?" he asked. "She's been reaching out to everyone." "What do you mean?" I replied, feeling a mix of curiosity and concern. "She's trying to get people to feel sorry for her. She's saying that you're being unfair in the divorce," he explained. I felt a wave of anger rise in me. Unfair? She's the one who left. She made her choice. Jake's voice turned serious. "Just be careful, man. Don't let her manipulate you. You have to stay strong." I knew he was right. I couldn't let her tactics affect me. I had to keep my focus on the divorce. I refused to be swayed by her attempts to play the victim. A few days later, Lisa requested to meet with me. I was hesitant but agreed. I thought it might be beneficial to hear her out. We arranged to meet at a cafe nearby. When I arrived, she was already sitting at a table, looking anxious. I took a deep breath and joined her. "What do you want to talk about?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "I just want to explain myself," she said, her voice shaky. "I know I've made mistakes, but I didn't mean to hurt you." I stared at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. "You made your choices, Lisa. You chose to leave and pursue a life with someone else. You can't just erase that." She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I know. I messed up, but I thought we could work things out. I thought you'd be willing to forgive me." I felt a mix of anger and pity. Forgive you for what? For betraying me? For taking our life together and throwing it away? That's not something I can simply brush aside. "I'm not trying to manipulate you," she said, her voice rising. "I just wanted a chance to explain." I shook my head. "You had your chance, Lisa. I can't keep going back and forth. I've moved on." She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't want it to end like this. I thought we had something special." I felt a pang of sadness. "We did, but you chose to walk away from it. I can't keep holding on to something that's gone." After our conversation, I left the cafe feeling conflicted. I knew I had to stay strong, but part of me felt sorry for her. She was struggling, and I could see that. But I reminded myself that I couldn't let her guilt trip me into changing my mind. In the following weeks, the divorce proceedings continued. I received updates from my lawyer, and it became clear that Lisa was becoming desperate. She had started to make unreasonable demands, trying to sway the negotiations in her favor. One day, I received a call from my lawyer with news that shocked me. "Lisa is trying to claim that you're hiding assets," he said. "She's insisting that you're not being honest about your inheritance." I felt a rush of anger. "That's ridiculous. I've been transparent about everything." "We need to prepare for her next move," he advised. "She's trying to gain leverage, and we need to be ready for it." I spent the next few days gathering all my documentation regarding the inheritance. I had to prove that I was being honest and fair. I wouldn't let her manipulate the situation. As the divorce negotiations continued, I found myself in a position of power. I used my knowledge of my art collection to my advantage. I knew its worth could help me secure a favorable outcome. At our next mediation meeting, I presented my case confidently. I laid out the evidence of Lisa's spending habits and her attempts to manipulate the situation. I stood firm, refusing to let her guilt-tripping affect me. Lisa tried to argue, but I could see she was losing her confidence. The more I presented my evidence, the more desperate she became. I felt a sense of satisfaction as I watched her struggle. By the end of the meeting, my lawyer and I had reached a solid agreement. I felt a surge of relief and triumph. I had fought hard for what I deserved, and I was finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. As I left the meeting, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. I had faced my fears and stood my ground. The storm was still raging, but I was ready for whatever came next. I was determined to move forward and build a new future for myself. The divorce was moving forward, and I felt a sense of relief with every passing day. I had stood my ground during the negotiations, and it was clear that I was no longer the man Lisa could control. But as I watched her struggle, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Lisa's life began to crumble. I noticed changes in her behavior. She became more desperate as the divorce dragged on. I heard from mutual friends that she was trying to reach out to them for support, but they were hesitant. They had seen how things had played out between us, and they didn't want to get involved. One evening, I received a text from Jake. "Did you hear about Mark?" he wrote. "He's not with Lisa anymore." I felt a mix of surprise and satisfaction. "What happened?" I replied. He found out about all the money issues. He's not interested in being with someone who can't manage their life, Jake said. A part of me felt bad for Lisa, but I reminded myself that she had made her choices. She had left me for someone else, and now it seemed that her new life was falling apart as well. I couldn't let guilt cloud my judgment. I had to focus on my own future. As the weeks went by, Lisa's desperation became more evident. I received a call from my lawyer, who informed me that Lisa was trying to manipulate the situation again. She's claiming that you're being unfair in the division of assets, he said. She's trying to paint you as the villain. I felt anger bubbling inside me. This is absurd. I've been nothing but fair. We need to continue building our case. Don't let her tactics get to you, he advised. I took his advice to heart. I continued to gather evidence while keeping my emotions in check. I focused on my own life, determined to move forward. I spent time painting and exploring new interests. I was rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. Then came the day of our final confrontation. We had a court date scheduled, and I knew this would be the moment where everything would come to a head. I felt nervous but ready. I arrived at the courthouse early, going over my notes one last time. When Lisa walked in, she looked different. There was a heaviness in her eyes, and I could sense her desperation. I tried to remain calm as we both took our seats in the courtroom. As the hearing began, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The judge listened to both our sides, and I presented my case clearly. I explained how Lisa's spending habits had affected our finances and how I had worked hard to protect my interests. Lisa took her turn, and I could see her frustration. She struggled to find the right words. "I just want what I deserve," she said, her voice shaky. The judge raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" Lisa hesitated, and I could see the cracks in her facade. She was losing her grip. I felt a sense of satisfaction as I listened to her. I had prepared thoroughly, and I was ready to counter her claims. "Your actions led us here, Your Honor. She chose to pursue a life with someone else and left our marriage behind. I simply want to protect what I've earned." The judge nodded, considering my words. The tension in the room was palpable. I felt a surge of confidence as I presented my evidence. When it was my turn to respond to Lisa's claims, I stood firm. "I've worked hard for everything I have. I'm not hiding anything, and I will not let her manipulate this situation any longer." Lisa's eyes widened in frustration. She looked at the judge, then back at me, trying to find her footing. "I just want a chance to start over," she said, her voice cracking. "I want a chance to start over too," I replied. "But that means being fair and honest about what happened. This is not just about her. It's about both of us moving forward." I could see the judge processing my words. I felt a sense of vindication as I stood my ground. I refused to let Lisa's tears sway me. I knew that I had to stay focused on the facts. The judge made his decision after some deliberation. He ruled in my favor regarding the division of assets. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had fought hard, and it had paid off. As I left the courtroom, I felt a mix of emotions. I was proud of myself for standing up to Lisa and for protecting my future. But I also felt a sense of sadness. This was the end of a chapter in my life that I had once cherished. That evening, I received a text from Jake. "How did it go?" he asked. "I won," I replied, feeling a sense of triumph. The judge ruled in my favor. "Great. Let's celebrate," he wrote back. I agreed, and we met at our favorite bar. As I sat there with a drink in hand, I reflected on the journey I had taken. I was no longer the man who had let Lisa control my life. I had found my strength. Jake raised his glass. "Here's to new beginnings," he said, smiling. "To new beginnings," I replied, clinking my glass against his. As the night went on, I felt a sense of freedom. I was ready to embrace my future, whatever it might hold. I was no longer defined by my past. I had fought for my life, and I was ready to build something new. The storm had passed, and I was finally ready to move on. The divorce was finalized, and I felt a mix of relief and newfound freedom. I had fought hard for my rights, and now I was ready to embrace my next chapter. As I stood in my apartment, I took a moment to reflect. The journey had not been easy, but I had grown stronger through it all. I decided to take some time for myself. I wanted to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. I started taking painting classes more seriously. The colors and brushes became my escape. I found peace in creating art, something I had always loved but neglected during my marriage. One day, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Lisa. My heart raced as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. Inside, she expressed her regrets and asked for forgiveness. She wrote about how she had realized her mistakes and how she wished things had turned out differently. I read her words carefully. I could see her vulnerability, but I also felt a wave of indifference wash over me. I understood her pain, but I had moved on. I had spent so long fighting for my own happiness that I didn't want to go back to the past. I took a deep breath and decided to respond. I thanked her for her letter, but made it clear that I was moving forward with my life. I wished her well and hoped she would find happiness, but I would not be a part of it. As I sent the letter, I felt a sense of closure. I was finally free from the weight of my past. I was ready to focus on my future and the possibilities that lay ahead. In the months that followed, I continued to build my life. I invested in my art, and I started showcasing my work at local galleries. I met new people who encouraged me and shared my passion for creativity. My confidence grew as I received positive feedback on my pieces. I also reconnected with old friends. I reached out to people I hadn't spoken to in years, and we shared laughs and memories. It felt good to reconnect and to be reminded of the person I used to be before my marriage changed me. One evening, I attended an art exhibition where I had a piece displayed. As I mingled with other artists and art lovers, I felt a sense of belonging. I was no longer just Alex, the man who had been betrayed. I was Alex, the artist. During the exhibition, I met a woman named Mia. She was warm and genuine, with a passion for art that matched my own. We struck up a conversation, and it flowed effortlessly. As the night went on, we shared stories and laughter, and I felt a spark of connection. Mia and I exchanged numbers, and soon after, we began to see each other regularly. She was supportive of my art and encouraged me to pursue my dreams. With her by my side, I felt alive again. I was learning to love and trust again, but this time it felt different. I was more aware of my own worth. As we spent more time together, I shared my story of the divorce. I was honest about my past, but I also made it clear that I was ready to move forward. Mia listened without judgment. She understood the importance of healing and growth. Eventually, I invited her to my studio for a painting session. We created art together, laughing and sharing our thoughts. It felt liberating to be open and vulnerable with her. I was building a new life, one filled with creativity and connection. One sunny afternoon, as we painted together, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I looked at my life, and I could hardly believe how far I had come. I had fought through the storm of my divorce, and I had emerged stronger and more resilient. Mia turned to me and said, "You've really come into your own, haven't you?" I smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "I have. It took a lot of work, but I'm finally living for myself." As the seasons changed, so did my life. I continued to showcase my art, and I felt a sense of purpose. I was no longer defined by my past. I was building a future filled with hope and creativity. One evening, I received a call from a woman whose husband had been deployed when everything with Lisa was happening. She told me how my story had inspired her to stand up for herself. She thanked me for being brave and fighting back. Her words touched me deeply. I realized that my journey had not only changed my life but had also impacted others. I pinned her letter to my fridge as a reminder of the resilience that comes from facing adversity. As I settled into my new life, I felt peace in the quiet moments. I was no longer haunted by the shadows of my past. I had rebuilt my life, one filled with art, love, and connection. I was free to create my own path, and it felt beautiful. I looked forward to the future with hope, ready to embrace all the possibilities that lay ahead. I had learned that even in the aftermath of betrayal, something good could emerge. I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, one that was entirely my own.